when a lot of people start working on arpeggios, they just play the arpeggios in one octave. Now there's not anything wrong with this, but there's a lot more you can do with arpeggios. For example, if we start with a C major arpeggio, we got C, E, G, C, C, G, E, C. Cool. So that's just the basic shape. Those are the notes. But remember that there's C's and E's and G's all up and down the fretboard. It's not all focused on that one part of the fretboard, or if you did it here. There's a lot more to it than just that part of the fretboard. So the correct way, in my opinion, to practice arpeggios is get used to that shape, but then learn how to see the other patterns and the other multitude of shapes that get you those other notes all up and down the fretboard. So let's start with this basic shape right here, C, E, G, C, and look at some other ways to do it. We can also take a look and play it like this, and I'll have other people play the basic one octave shape like this. C, E, G, C, G, E, C. And that's another very useful shape. It involves a little bit of a shift, and as we'll see when we're going up and down the fretboard, most of this concept involves learning how to shift smoothly and effectively. This is a very small shift from C up to this E right here. But as we go on, we'll see some more complicated shifts. Now the next way that we can play a one octave scale is on two strings. And this is this is a really good prep for shifting and getting up to more than one octave. We have C, E, G, and then we'll shift up here to this C. Now we have a couple different ways to finger this C. We could finger it with the pinky, could finger it with the second finger, could maybe finger it with the third finger, or finger it with the first finger, depending on where we're going from here. I generally like to finger it with the second finger because you can then extend the arpeggio up to this this E and this G up here, if you're going to do it like that. You could also shift to the pinky. I generally don't like shifting from pinky to pinky. It doesn't seem like it's as strong a shift. You could also shift to the first finger. There's not really that much reason to shift to the third finger because there's no real shape. There's no real shape that's very common that could allow for the second and first and fourth finger in that position. So that's a really good way to practice the shift pretty much halfway up the fretboard. Another way to practice a one octave scale on two strings is this, C, E, G, and then shifting from here up to that C. And this one you can play with the pinky, you can play with the second finger, or you can play with the first finger. As a general rule of thumb, try not to shift using the same finger that you came off of. So this might feel and seem and sound a little awkward when you're shifting up with this first finger right here, since you played the G with the first finger. But whatever works. I would practice it as many different ways as possible. And it also depends whether or not you're going back down. So what are some other ways that we can practice the C major scale in one octave? Well, we just practiced doing it on two strings. Now let's just whittle it down to one. So let's take it C, E, G, C, C, G, E, C. Now this is going to be a little awkward just because it's all in one string, but it's going to really force you into thinking on the horizontal nature of the instrument. Now Mig Goodrick has this really interesting book called The Advancing Guitarist, where he talks about the science of the unichord or uniguitar or something like that, which is really good for helping you think in terms of horizontal application of scales and patterns rather than completely vertical, which we're very used to. So check it out if you're interested. So here we go again. C, E, G, C, G, C, E, C. Cool. So once we're done with all of this one octave stuff, we can move on to two octave and more patterns with that. So the one that I want to show you, there's a bunch of different ways to do this, but I'm going to show you two octave patterns on three strings, because two octave patterns on four strings are a little easier. Three strings are going to really force you to think about shifting. So let's start here on the bottom of the instrument and play C, excuse me, C, E, G, shift, C, E, G, and then C up here. C, G, E, C, shift, G, C, or G, E, C. So here's the whole pattern without me saying the notes. Now that one's nice because it has the same sort of symmetry to it. You're playing this pattern of the basic triad and then shifting up an octave. C, E, G. So 1, 4, 1, shift, 1, 4, 1. And then you're going to grab the C on top of the 4. 4, 1, 4, 1, 1, 4, 1. And that's what I was talking about, how these two fingers are really the unit that helps you shift and get from place to place. So another way to do this from 3 strings we're going to look at is using the open G. Now, using an open string isn't that common on electric compared to upright bass. However, it's still a good, useful tool to figure out how you could bounce, I think is the term they use, bounce up using the open string. So in this case, we're going to do this. We're going to play C, E, play the open G, and now we can go anywhere we want, and it's going to be a very smooth transition. So let's practice just jumping way up to the top of the fretboard with this. So we got C, E, G. Let's play the C up here with the second finger. So we're just going to play that 1 octave pattern just way up here because we had the G to bounce up with. So, excuse me. You can get really fluid with this if you practice it enough. So anyway, I hope you started getting some ideas for practicing fingerings. It's one of the things that electric bass players tend to not really focus on, but it's a really important tool for really getting into the heart of playing arpeggios and playing triads. And the next couple lessons we'll take a look at minor triads and augmented and diminished triads, which can be a little tricky on the instrument. So stay tuned.